Hello and welcome to Property Investments UK. In today's video we're going to be looking at how to understand property fraud and 5 signs that you might be in trouble on a potential deal. So there's 5 potential things to consider when you're looking at a potential property deal that are surefire or potentially red herring signs as to there might be issues with that particular deal, or there might be issues with that particular company selling a potential property deal. The first part of that is looking at understanding what the company is effectively that's selling that property deal. And there's lots of companies that come into property investments because it's a high value area that sell properties simply on the back of like a document sheet, or it's a one-page website that you go to based on an advert maybe that you see online, but there's no other form of context around that website. So maybe the contact details are a bit sketchy, or maybe there's not much more information on the website apart from one deal that's currently available, or maybe some previous examples of deals that are currently available. Now that's not a definite sign that that company is not legit, but it's certainly something that would make sure you look into a little bit further, because it's so easy for companies to kind of set up and request high deposits just with a very simple kind of website. So you want to try and make sure that it's a company that's got some pedigree, that's been around for a little bit of time, maybe it's got some reviews online and something that maybe they might be interested in introducing you to previous clients. So you can have a chat and understand how the sales cycle works, what the property deals that come available are, and also just try and understand if that company is potentially something that's going to be around long term, or if it's a brand new company that's got no intention for a long term kind of future, let's say, and they're just interested in the short term gain. The second thing to consider is the reservation fees. Now, we've done a video on this one regarding deposits and paying reservation fees, and we'll put a link to this video below that so you can understand how that potential structure works. But simply put, in terms of the value of the reservation fee, that can sometimes again be a red herring. Now, most transactions for property investment deals are around £500 to £1,000 for a reservation fee or deposit. If you're speaking to a company and they're requesting something that's much greater than that for their industry standard, again, it's something to kind of consider as whether it's maybe legit or there's potential issues around it. So if you're looking for a straightforward buy-to-let, or a straightforward HMO, or a straightforward kind of development refurbishment flip project that's typical value for that location, typical standard in terms of the situation and the buying and the selling process, that reservation fee should be around that sort of level. If you're looking for something that's a lot greater in terms of value and size, maybe it's a very large off-plan development that you're wanting to acquire, or maybe it's a plot of land with planning permission that you're wanting to acquire, those deposits will tend to increase based on the value of the site. So if you're looking at a low value site but the deposits are very high, or a high value site and the deposits are extremely kind of low in context to what the industry standard is, that's again something to maybe consider looking into a bit further. Okay, the third thing to consider is access for viewings. Now, not being able to gain access for viewings can be quite typical for rented properties. Now, if you're going to look at properties on the market with auctions, for example, and there's a range of different opportunities that they tend to sell, and some of those are going to be tenanted properties already on day one, so you can buy it and it's existing, got an income coming in straight away. They very often don't want to disturb that tenant with an influx of potential viewings, so they sell a property as sold as seen. So those scenarios are quite straightforward and quite simple to kind of understand that you might not be able to do a viewing on that type of property. However, there are some properties, again, that some sourcing agents and some investment companies will sell where they say, look, there's no access to viewing, but there's no real reason as to why that could be. Now, if you're looking to buy maybe a completed property that is vacant, there should be no reason why you're not able to arrange a viewing on that property. The typical reasons why you can't is maybe if it's tenanted and they don't want to disturb the tenants, or they're not able to disturb the tenants for any particular reason. Maybe there's something written in the lease, if it's with a lease with a charity or a housing association, for example. Or if it's maybe going through a development process and is currently in refurbishment, so it's maybe not safe to physically view the property at the moment because of health and safety regulations, you should then be able to view the property once it's been completed. So that's the kind of thing to consider on a viewing access. Just try and understand what the reasons are, I suppose, behind viewing access. And then if you can't view, then just try and understand to see if that's maybe a red herring or if it's something that's legitimate behind the scenes. The fourth thing to consider is getting the full details of that property investment. Now, there certainly are some companies that sell some property deals where they're not able to provide, let's say, online the full details for that property. Maybe it's tenanted, maybe it's a property where the vendor has specific requirements over the terms on how that property is particularly sold. So you may be able to have a look at potential deal and all of a sudden you only get the initial details. So maybe it's a street and a location and a postcode, but you don't have the street number. Now that can be typical with some property investments in the early stages. You can certainly ask enough questions from a due diligence point of view to see if the location is tentatively right, so the street's right, for example. Try and understand what the yield is, try and understand what the condition is, what the tenancy profile is, if there's currently tenanted or may be tenanted in the future, and see if it gets close to a potential deal you want to be looking at. When you then get to the stage of either paying a reservation fee and you've secured the property, you should then certainly be given the full details of that property, or once it starts the purchase process, that'll be in the documents and the details on that sales cycle going forward, so you'll have the full address details of it. And going back to the viewing aspect as well, if you're able to arrange a viewing on it, that's fantastic. Gives you context as to whether that deal is going to be legitimate or not. If you have an investment company that's selling you a property and they're withholding all of the information or just giving you a postcode or a town, for example, then again, that's probably a red herring that something's maybe a bit amiss. And then the final point I'd probably suggest is pushy salesmen. Now, we've all had this when we've gone to kind of buy things, car sales, properties via estate agents are typical ones where you get constantly bombarded by the salesperson on, are you ready to make a decision? Can you put an offer forward? Things like that. Now, ultimately, there are going to be some scenarios where time is of the essence, and that salesperson or individual might be doing their best job to try and find you the right project in the right time frame and at the right price. And to do that, you have to make a decision on whether that property kind of works for you. But you shouldn't be pushed into making a decision on any potential property deal. It should be down to you to ultimately take as much time as you need. Sometimes you might lose a property because of due diligence, or you're spending too much time thinking about it. I'd say that's probably okay. Like, it's more important for you to make sure that you're comfortable with that potential property deal. If you're not comfortable, simply walk away. There's no reason to kind of physically have to buy every single deal you look at. There's always another opportunity coming down the line. And if you have a very aggressive or a very pushy salesman, again, I'd probably say maybe try and understand the context to it, but it might be another red herring. Take your time, do due diligence, make sure you're happy with the project, and then you're going to be much more comfortable in the future with that potential purchase, so that you don't have any kind of form of buyer's remorse. So I hope that helps. Hope it gives some context to some potential property frauds or property scams that you might consider. If you're potentially looking at a property deal, hopefully it'll stop you or prevent you from looking at the wrong potential deals. Any questions, don't hesitate to ask, and I look forward to catching up with you in the next video. All the best, take care. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this content and you'd like to join our free online property training course, we've got a link for it on this page. And in there we cover a range of different property strategies to help you get started, either building a long-term property portfolio or creating a cash-flowing property business. We also look at ways to increase your return on investment with any of the properties you're maybe considering. And we also have a couple of cheat sheets and downloadable documents in there as well. Simply click on the link to join the free training course today.